tried to get rid of the Latin Mass, and the Pope is trying to restore it. My reading of Vatican II is it merely said if there was a sufficient demand for the vernacular, it should be allowed. Some people then tried to use it to get rid of Latin liturgy, but is he a conservative Pope or merely a Pope?
I think he's a Catholic Pope.
Yeah.
You know, and Catholic popes are sometimes reaching in the direction of the new and sometimes reaching in the direction of the old. As Jesus said, the wise man takes both and brings them together. And I think our Holy Father has an incredible grasp of the Church's tradition and his history, and is trying to bring us all to appreciate the past as we head into the future.
Mm-hmm. Bishop Henry, in Calgary, the media and the Church. Now, you've had a couple of encounters with the media. Fair, balanced, why am I even asking this? Fair, balanced, informed about the Church, or the complete contrary?
I would say all of the above. It depends on who you're talking to, really. One of the things that we did find is that we had a real miscommunication exercise emanating out of Rome. It would have helped, for example, if the bishops had been forewarned or given a heads up that this lifting of the excommunication was going to occur. It put us in a position where we too were caught trying to defend something that we did not know fully the reasons for. Within the Jewish community, of course, I found that there was a great need for both of us to cut one another a little slack. We've been going on with Jewish-Christian relationships and dialogue for quite some time, and we were making incredible progress, and all of a sudden we hit a bump in the road, and some of those more skeptical people automatically jumped on this as an issue and tried to blow it all out of proportion. The more common heads and the media in general needed some instruction on this matter, and unfortunately it took us a while to get the message out. It was 3 days of chaos before we started to once again rebuild and get beyond simply miscommunication, misinformation, an understanding of what excommunication is all about, the status of the Lefebvre's bishops, how we deal with them, and the nature of just simply lifting a barrier. But there's still outstanding issues regarding, you know, the anti-Semitism that sometimes has kind of characterized this particular movement, the rejection of Vatican II, and so on. There are lots of issues outstanding before we get to the whole point of the unity that the Pope obviously desires.
Mm-hmm. Vatican II, again, quite a bit written about this, and we can't do justice on a TV show. But it wasn't pressing a button and saying, change everything, liberalism rules the day, relativism is terrific. It was relatively mild in its reforms, but it came at a time when reform was in the air in the 1960s. Yes. It surely was exploited and abused by people, I think, who had an agenda.
I think so. You know, I grew up at that time. I was in the seminary during the years of the council. It was a great, we had a great sense of a new future that lay ahead of us, a sense that if we preached the gospel clearly, that somehow the world would listen. So there was an optimism that probably was not warranted at the time. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, the council itself was an effort on the part of the Church to speak the full gospel without compromise, clearly, but in a new environment. And unfortunately, some folks focused more on the new environment than on the gospel in the follow-through with the council. I think that's changed. I think there's a sense now that we need to understand that the council is in continuity with the past that went before it. But the Church is always supposed to try to present the full gospel in a way that contemporary people understand, and so we need to live that out in this time too.
So those people, generally uninformed, but those people who say that Pope Benedict is an opponent of Vatican II, he wishes Vatican II had never occurred, that's a caricature?
Oh, absolutely. He was one of the experts at the time of the council. He was a young theologian that was well respected, who helped develop the documents that came from the council. And so to say that he somehow is opposed to the council is just the opposite of the truth. He was one of the bright stars and leaders of the theological reflection of that time.
Mm. And the role and place of Latin. Again, this seems to be a subject of enormous misunderstanding. Did Vatican II say that Latin was somehow not to be included?
No, actually it allowed the vernacular. I think the expectation was that Latin would maintain a presence in the life of the Church that it hasn't maintained. It was after the council, actually, that that the vernacular languages became the common way of worshiping in the church. I personally think that's a good idea. I think it's important for us to value the Latin and to use it in our liturgy, but I think most people today have grown accustomed to being able to worship in the language that they know, and that has served the church very, very well.
Brief break, little hiatus we call them, then back with far more discussion. It's going to be terrific. Don't you dare go away. We'll see you very soon. Welcome back to Michael Coren's show, The State of the Catholic Church Today, and we're really lucky to have 4 people on the panel who really do know this subject so very, very well. And if any of you are saying, well, what about the critics of? Oh, come on, I mean, switch on TV at any time. It's only critics of. And let's compensate a little bit by having an intelligent, informed explanation of what the Church does stand for. Your book, Render Unto Caesar, Serving the Nation by Living Our Catholic Beliefs in Political Life. This is Canada. You mustn't allow your religious beliefs to interfere with your politics, don't you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
But in the States, Nancy Pelosi, your favorite person, who apparently was at a different meeting with the Pope than the Pope was at. But the idea that I'm a Catholic, but when I get into politics, I can't be a politician as a Catholic because I have to represent the people, and they may not be Catholic.
Well, I think that's a terrible idea. You know, in the United States, we have this tradition of separation of church and state, and I think that's a very good idea. But the separation of faith from politics is an entirely different matter. Faith is who we are. If we really are believers, it's a foundational part of who we are. And then to act as though we're not believers in the public square would be similar to a husband taking off his wedding ring when he goes to work. And if he does that, we know that the marriage won't last, and the wife will be very unhappy.
I'm going to use that and pretend it's mine. That's a very good line.
It's true. So for us to pretend not to be Christians, if we are Christians in the public square, is to deny the reality of who we are. And it damages ourselves. It certainly damages the people we're supposed to serve in our political actions.
Because it's never on issues of poverty or hunger. Well, I mean, as a Christian, I don't believe in poverty, but I have to represent the people, and they're very conservative, so I have to support poverty. It's on moral issues. It's on issues of sexuality, life, personal issues, abortion, euthanasia, same-sex. Why is that? Because it affects the most personal and deepest.
You can take out your wallet and you can give money to the poor. You can be able to, in a very distant way, agree about various tax questions or how our money is to be spent in foreign development. But when it strikes at my life, it means I have to change. So when it strikes at something that I consider to be any kind of an infringement on how I would like to be able to act, that's a serious problem. I think Francis Fukuyama put it very well when he talked about, the increasing, not just anti-authoritarianism of the individual, but the increasing enemy of the individual that doesn't want any restrictions. And therefore, I want to be able to pick and choose that which allows me to do what I want. The difficulty is that it means that as individuals, we really don't connect well to communities. And that's actually going against ourselves as human beings. We have to live in community. And how we live in community in a pluralistic society means that we have to be able to talk intelligently about what it is that makes us who we are. There's no such thing as a person without faith in politics or indeed in public life in general. What faith do you have? What do you believe and why do you believe it? It's incumbent on us to be able to enter into that public square and in a pluralistic society to be able to debate, to intelligently look at the question of power blocks, because the reality is votes count, but to be able to do that in a very public, clear and above board way, and not to be able to just rely on people's sort of general concepts or ideas, or indeed, to be frank, biases. So here in Canada, what I find difficult for us is to be able to say, no, I have a perfect right as a full human being to be a citizen, engage in the public debate. And if you don't like that, well, that's your biases and your problems.
Bishop Henry in Calgary, we're not speaking here of a politician keeping their views secret and hidden.